In 3, 2, 1.
John, am I live?
You're live, sir.
Hey guys, welcome to our 9th episode of WheelHouse. We're almost at number 10, which is kind of exciting here. We have an awesome show. I have my good friend Lawrence Dunning back on today. We have, the last couple of weeks, had a little bit of technical difficulties with different guests, so we wanted to bring some people back who have been extremely influential. And Lawrence is a guy we're going to have on a bunch of times because he's just a guy that everybody wants to learn from, everybody wants to hear from. He's a mentor to me. He's kind of been somebody I've looked up to for a very long time. I attribute a lot of my success to the fact that he's like a big brother to me. So I'm excited to have him back on today. And of course, we got John. John, can they see you?
Now they can.
Cool.
Hello, everybody.
What's going on with you, John?
Not too much, just working. And I want to give a quick shout out.
You always got good shout outs.
I know, right?
What's the shout out today for?
So I'm going this Saturday to a dedication ceremony out in Willowbrook for Maggie's father. And there is a pavilion in a park near their house that's being dedicated in his name.
Wow.
Because of all of the charitable efforts and charity work he does in and around the neighborhood.
Wow.
This is going to be the second time I've gone to something like this. The man is he goes out of his way for everybody, and it's nice to see recognition. And I'm probably going to film a little bit. We might actually do a quick clip next week. But quick shout out to Doug Statina, Maggie's dad. We were at a Memorial Day parade that he always marches in last week, and then this coming Saturday is the dedication. So he's a gentleman to live up to.
That's incredible. It is not easy to get a township or municipality to dedicate something to you. That's kudos to him. Congratulations to him and Maggie and the family. Absolutely. You always have good shout outs.
I know good people.
I don't ever have like a cool shout out, but you always have a shout out, so we're good with the shout outs.
You have great guests.
I do.
You do.
Great bump and set for the spike here. That was good. So our first guest, Lawrence, thanks for being on again, buddy.
My pleasure. Can I give a shout out?
Yeah, give somebody a shout out.
So my current, I just became an uncle. So
Congratulations.
Nephew,
Congratulations.
So my brother and his wife had a son. So
congratulations
cool.
to your brother.
About time. My parents be waiting for either of us to get going. It's awesome.
You're kind of next.
I'm next, yeah.
You're next. That's awesome. So born this week, yesterday?
Yeah, yesterday.
Very cool.
They still haven't found a name yet, so it's exciting.
Maybe Lawrence Jr. Your brother's going to be like, no way. That's awesome, though. Yeah, boy or girl?
A boy.
Boy. Oh, very cool. I'm sure mom and dad are really excited.
Yeah, I'll be back in a couple of weeks to see him. So.
Oh, cool. When are you going?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay, yeah. Cool. I'll be out of town in 2 weeks, too. That's awesome. Well, thanks for coming back on.
My pleasure.
Everybody loves hearing from you. And I figured today we would touch on a whole lot of different things. One, maybe elaborate more on how when you moved here, you started doing everything in the trading world, became super successful in your 20s. I mean, I'm going to say this because he's a humble guy, but to become a millionaire in your 20s when you just moved here from a different country, it's incredible. I'm sure a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent of people can ever say they're a millionaire, let alone a millionaire in your 20s. And then retiring yourself to then go and pursue your passion, becoming a successful professional athlete, and then coming back and again becoming super successful in another career. You always win. And I know you've had losses along the way, but you're always winning. So I guess for people who maybe didn't listen last time, do you want to let them know how you moved here and how you started?
Yeah, the thing is, I was in trading, and I got in you could be a good trader, but you have to have the right market too. So I was kind of lucky. I came here with a company, and we were all making a lot of money, but the company was keeping 95% of it. So then me and an older guy, an older colleague, he said, why are we giving away all the money we make? Let's set up our own trading group. So we did, and we had a couple of good years. We actually just missed it. If we had done it a year or two earlier, it would have been a lot better. But as soon as we started on our own, trading became a lot harder, a lot more. The business model of the small groups trading was getting replaced by the big banks kind of taking over. But we still had a couple of years of crossover. And then it just got to the stage where as trading was changing and I realized I'd made a lot of money, I didn't really, when you're already into something, making money in trading is more like keeping score. And at the time I was young, I wasn't really spending it. I had the same plays. I didn't have a car back then. I was just, trading and trying to be competitive and win without realizing that, my account's going up and up and up. So then it got to the stage where as the market was changing, I suddenly thought, well, I've got a whole life I assumed I could be trading when I was 80 on a yacht in the south of France. I thought I've got a lifetime to make money, but I have a very small window to do other things. So that's why I took some time off to follow some athletic things that have a timeline based on your age, But of course, I didn't plan it too well, because then when I finished with that, I assumed I would step back into my spot on the pit and I would start making money again. And of course, just when that kind of was happening, there was the whole business model had changed. The pit guys were all complaining to me about losing money, and that was a bit of a wake-up call. So I had to reinvent myself, thanks to you. And I thought, you warned me about real estate being somewhat frustrating, but I know it can be very lucrative too. And my whole thing is, once you've worked for yourself, it's very hard to go back to being told what to do. So I like the flexibility and the opportunity of real estate. So it's been interesting.
Yeah, let's go to real estate, and then I'll go back to the athletics and everything you did. But real estate is as a realtor, it can be a very frustrating thing, and it's really hard to stay motivated for long enough to be successful. Now are very successful now, but it hasn't been just a year or two. You've been in it now.
This is 4 years.
4 years. So we get a lot of new realtors who are like, "Oh, I want to be as successful as you," or Lawrence or Jeff in our office. They look at even like Andrew in our office. Shout out to Andrew. He's doing so well this year, but he's in year 3, and everybody thinks it happens overnight. Right. But it's been very frustrating to deal with ups and downs, but that's in anything. I mean, when you started your MMA career, even you had a couple frustrating events at the beginning, and then you became super successful. I think in everything, to be able to become successful, you have to be able to stomach a very high level of frustration and failure. And you always, whether you're failing or winning at an event, you're always staying motivated to go on to the next thing, which is incredible.
But I think that's on goal setting. So I think when I got my license, I had people in the class, and their goal was to pass their real estate license, keep the existing job, and do 1 or 2 closings a year as some passive income. So if that's your goal, that's going to be your goal. Either you're going to get nothing or you get 1 or 2 closings. My goal immediately was to get back to some semblance of financial success to where I was before trading. So then your goal is higher, and then what's the next step? You have your goal. That's all great, but you got to put some foundation behind it. So you got to look for mentors. So I looked at you. I read books on very successful brokers, like what do you do? How do you build a business? And then, it's a couple of years of work to get to where you want to be. But yeah, you can get there.
It's my office makes fun of me, or our office makes fun of me all the time about this. My favorite quote is, "A goal without a plan is just a wish," and it's the plan piece of it that 100%. I feel like people miss.
But I think that's a good thing when you talk about goal setting. A lot of people say set goals. So if I just say, we'll use jiu-jitsu as an example. A new student starts. He's a white belt. He's just done jiu-jitsu. He says, my goal is to be a black belt. But that's so far, that's at least a decade of hard training, unless he's a, BJ Penn kind of athlete. Then that's, 3-4 years. But even in that case, it's still 3-4 years of every day, twice a day, living that lifestyle. So you have to, I think the key is you break your goals down. So I think you want to have, who's that great real estate mentor who we love his book? Gary Keller.
Yeah, Gary Keller.
He wrote a great book called The One Thing. And I always thought you should set your goals as, like a 1-year goal. And then you kind of break that down maybe into quarters. And then each quarter you might say, in 3 months, I want to lose this much weight. So what is that every week? And then over 4 quarters, that's 1 year. And then in the back of my mind, what's my 5-year goal? So I always had that. I always had my 1-year goals, which I kind of broke up a little bit, and then my 5-year goals. The one thing from his book, the one thing it talked about is what is your 1-day goals? And I think I got to the stage where I made a lot of money when I was young, and then I left that work and I was kind of pursuing all my athletic goals, and most of them I either achieved or I didn't achieve. But by the time I retired from fighting, they were no longer important, and I was kind of for a little bit lost. And I realized the reason I was lost is because I had my 1-year goals, my 5-year goals. I never had my 1-day goals, and I think that's really important. Is you've always got to have, like, maybe you're 28 years old, you're crushing your career, you've got some other things going on. One day you want to have the American dream, right? The white picket fence house in the suburbs, a beautiful wife by your side, 2 kids and a dog. You don't know when, it depends on when you meet the woman. That's kind of a 1-day goal. Or another 1-day goal might be to have enough passive income where you don't have to work full time, you can just work part time and live your life. But you don't know when it's going to be. It kind of depends on a lot of things. So that for me was great. And I think that's that 1-day goal that doesn't have a timeline, but it's kind of, it'll shape your more short-term goals. And I think that for me, I read that book on a flight somewhere. I think I was flying back from California, and I had a couple of coffees and I was all focused, and it blew my mind, because I read that book at the right time, just when I was kind of goalless and I was trying to figure out what is the next step.
Yeah.
So
I love that. And you've been such a big mentor to me in read this book, read that book. And I read that book. It's an amazing book. And I think, and people don't know this about Lawrence, he writes his goals down. He has, visuals of his goals. You take it so far and your goals are so visual to you that you taught me something. You taught me to write my goals down more, make them visual, and really kind of keep me on track with some of my goals. But I equate it to a lot of realtors and then business folks as, that annual goal even is too big to just look at. It's too far away. If I told you, Lawrence, I want to lose 50 pounds this year, you would look at me and say, that's a lot of weight.
100%.
But if I said I want to lose a pound this week, you'd say, okay, stupid, don't eat Chipotle this week and you'll lose a pound. Pound a week for 52 weeks is 52 pounds. I think what people miss is being able to be successful for that many weeks. I call it winning the week. Try to win your week, and if you win enough weeks, you should be able to hit your goal.
But that's great. The owner of the very rapidly growing and very successful company On It that does a lot of sports supplements and workouts, he wrote a book, and I think it's called Own the Day. And he says, he talks a lot about momentum and things like that. And he said, listen, just forget about even the week. Today, get up. And he's got this whole thing in his book. He said, get up in the morning, have a bunch of water, get a light sweat out, try and get, 5 minutes of natural sunlight, start your day, maybe a little meditation. And then just starting your day right means that you're probably going to end the day right. And just having one good day, it'll be easier to get one of the second day. And I think that's a big thing with depressed people. And I've been in this position in a couple of times in my life. Intellectually, you know that whatever you're suffering through, and you're going to get past it intellectually, but you can't imagine getting past it, if that makes sense. And I think that's why when people are struggling in whatever they're going through, forget about trying to get to the end goal of 3 months down the road or 3 years down the road. Win the day, and then that'll be easy to win the week. And then once you won a week, it's going to be a lot easier to win the next week. So I think that's definitely true.
And I know you and I used to, and this is the biggest thing I miss about the city. And people are going to be like, "Oh my God, bromance!" in a second. And if you guys have any questions for Lawrence, put them in the comments, and I'll ask Lawrence. But I used to love ending my day. We used to go on a dog walk, and it would just kind of reset our goals. We would talk. Now I put my dog out, and I don't get that. And in the mornings, I used to just take him for a walk, and you do get that sunlight and that restart the day. Now in the suburbs, I don't really get that. I get a long drive to the city. What do you do in the mornings? Because I know you have some stuff you do in the mornings to start your day off.
Yeah, so a lot of people, I'm a little different because I'm not a morning person, but I will have my phone. I'm working late like you.
Yeah.
So I will have my phone off in the morning, and then I do two things. I have the whole thing about the difference between a happy person and an unhappy person tends to not be circumstances. It tends to be our perceptions of our circumstances. So it comes down to appreciation. So it doesn't matter if you've got X, Y, and Z in your life that's a debacle, but you have A, B, and C that's good. If you wake up in the morning and you say, okay, I'm so grateful for what I do have, whatever it is, the fact that we're alive, as long as we're not on our deathbed, is something, right? So it doesn't matter how bad your situation is, the first thing you should do in the morning is just write down. It takes me 30 seconds or 20 seconds. I have this old notebook by my bed. My alarm goes off. I hate the mornings. I'm always like, wish I could sleep a little bit more. But I grab it. I grab a pen, and I just write down some of the things I'm grateful for, and then a couple of things what I'm happy I'm going to do that day or that week. Whether it's like competing next weekend, I'm following my dream, I'm healthy, I'm alive. I've got an awesome fiance, I've got 2 dogs. Whatever it is, doesn't matter. So I think that's good. And then honestly, I think I just start my day, and I try and do it. So the way I structure it, I try and either work for an hour or two, and then I try and get a workout early. Because I think if you don't, I think you got to get your body moving. I think the biggest problem, and I know when people that are very busy, I know that the days that I don't do that, and I say I'll work out tonight at 7 o'clock, I'm frazzled by then. I'm exhausted. So I think getting exercise early on, it's for me. If I get a good workout in early on, my day's won. Doesn't matter what I do the rest of the day. I've won the day already. So I think that's my key. I think is exercise.
I got to do that. I work. This because we text each other almost every night till 2 a.m. I rarely work out early. I always work out so late, but I always work out so exhausted. And a lot of times I get to, 10 p.m., 11 p.m., and I'm like, I can skip it today. I'll do it tomorrow. And then I skip the next day.
But when you were doing your weight loss challenge, that was amazing because you were absolutely exhausted. At the end of the day, you forced yourself to work out. That was great. But then, you're all fired up from the workout. You have all the endorphins. It's very hard to reset and sleep well. So I think if you just do it earlier, it's just I'll do a second workout later, just light weights or light cardio or something. But I think hard working out has to be, some people can't, but I think if you can do it earlier, it just gets you ready for the day, So I think that's...
So you mean I should go to noon jiu-jitsu classes with you and Jay and
100%.
everybody else? Actually, being that I signed up for the Chicago Open, I have to start going because I don't want to train twice and then get my ass kicked because
I didn't know you signed up.
I don't
That's
like
awesome.
losing. You didn't know I signed up? I'm signed up. So I signed up. I don't like to lose. So I should start going to Wednesday noon classes because we have this always Wednesdays at 3. So John's looking at me like, make sure you come. But it's a block away. So I just keep telling myself I should go at noon,
perfect,
finish
yeah.
training, and then come here. Even though in my head I was telling myself I would go to Wednesday night classes, but then I'm fairly exhausted.
Yeah. I think that the problem with our work is not that I don't think I'm not doing anything hard physically during the day, but I think mentally I have so many names and properties and people and little tiny things. It might be 50 things I've got to do, and they could all be a minute or two. Email this guy, text that guy, get this set up. But it's so much around my head, it makes you physically tired. So I think that's why do a little bit. Obviously, you wake up, you've got a few things to do early on, but then get your work done before you're mentally tired. Because so much of exhaustion, we feel tired, but physically we're not tired. We haven't really done anything. It's mental exhaustion.
That's really what it is for me. By the time I get home, and my day is structured weird because I have coaching and training realtors for a big part of the day, and then I have my own real estate clients. I got some of the stuff at the law firm. Now we have Bitmojo. So when I get home, I am just starting to dig out of emails. So I'm dealing with fires at night. So by the time I'm done digging out of emails, my mind is just like, I want to take a nap or go to sleep now. Right. It's very hard. So I have to figure out a way. Maybe not stay up texting you till 2, go to sleep a little bit earlier, and then get my workouts in earlier.
But the other thing is a lot of people are talking about that intermittent fasting, and I think it's great. I think days that so basically what you're trying to do is instead of waking up and having breakfast and then eating throughout the day until late at night, so your eating window is maybe, 16 hours, and then you sleep 8 hours and you're not eating for those 8 hours, try and reverse it. So try and shorten your eating window and have a longer time when you're not eating. So you can have the same amount of calories, but just by switching it around. So that's the new thing that everyone's talking about. And I know for myself too, when I do that, so the days, you can get up, maybe do a bit of work out on an empty stomach, and then eat, you're so much more focused. So you can kind of play with that too. That's really great.
Do you do that now, or are you?
I've been doing it because I'm one of those guys where I'm always hungry. So I eat first thing in the morning and I eat before I go to bed. And it's not what you're supposed to do. So I'm trying to shorten that window. It's not easy, but I'm working on it. Yeah.
See, I'm good at that because I can go a long time without eating.
Exactly.
But then I eat like a fatty when I do eat. I mean, I just eat Chipotle or I eat something bad. So it's shortening that window and then eating correctly. Right. Eating correctly is my problem. Not
but also
the
days
window.
you do that. I mean, if you already notice it when you get up in the morning and you start doing some work and your blood isn't in your stomach digesting food, you feel like you've had a coffee and you haven't. You don't really drink coffee, but you feel just very clear with your thoughts. And then I hate working out in the morning. I'm not a morning person. But when you force yourself to get through the workout, you feel so great. You've had no stimulants. You've got your workout in. You haven't eaten. Then you can eat kind of a light breakfast and start your day, and you're already winning. So that's huge, I think.
And you drink a ton of water. Because, I mean, you're doing it now, but you are just constantly. I know we used to go out on showings together, and you would have a gallon of water, and I had nothing. You're like, you're not going to drink
for 8 hours. You drink nothing. I'm like, how do you do it, bro? How can you survive? Yeah.
But what's crazy for me is, and Evan Shai was really all on top of me when I started working out with him. Shout out to Evan too. He's like, you got to drink at least a gallon of water a day. So when I started to drink a ton of water, I felt so much better throughout the day. My energy levels were higher just drinking water.
Yeah, they said there was some study. So I remember when I was in a trading pit, when I was real tired, I would stand all day and be shouting and thinking, and it was exhausting. And there was some study where if you just flush like 4 liters of water down, it kind of helps waking you up. So that's when I started doing it. Was when I was trading. But I think my brother, I remember when he was young, he was a teenager and he was trying to be a bodybuilder, and he's naturally pretty lean. So it was 100% the wrong sport for him to try to do it. But so what he did is he kept reading about more calories. So he was lifting a lot of weights, but he was force feeding himself, insane meals. Like his dinner would have, 100 grams of protein, mixing all these things together, combining the wrong types of foods. It was terrible. But so he started, and he always had, he never really had childhood acne or anything. And then obviously he's eating so much together and just forcing so much food in his system, he started to get really bad skin from it. I think he had a bit of psoriasis, and he freaked out. So he went to see this nutritionalist who's world famous in London, and she said, if you do one thing, I mean, there's all these different things that I want you to do, right? But she said, out of this list, if you just do one thing, just drink a lot of water. Because, basically, everything that's good for you, when it digests alkaline in your body. Everything that's bad for you tends to digest acidic in your body. But by drinking water, water's just alkaline for your body. So it's like if you're going to do one thing, and it's so easy. I mean, how hard is it just to
Right, and not
carry a water bottle around, just drink water? Yeah, pretty much everywhere you go is water fountains.
John's taking sips of his water now. He's like,
Exactly.
I want to look.
Every day, man, every day.
He's like, I want to look like Lawrence. I'm going to just keep drinking this water. But you stay active all the time. When you go on vacation, and John, you'll appreciate this, he went to California, did a jiu-jitsu competition recently. And I thought, okay, he's in California, he'll relax. And then you ran a half marathon through the Mojave Desert. And I didn't know he was doing this. And I got a text message from him like, hey, just finished the Mojave Desert half marathon. I'm like, what are you doing? And I'll never forget, he did a MMA fight, a grueling MMA fight, won his MMA fight, and then went to Thailand on a vacation. And then he's like, hey, buddy, I always wanted to run the Bangkok Marathon. So I just ran the marathon. I'm like, but you're not training to run a marathon. How did you run 26.2 miles just to do it? Which I was like, you're nuts. But you always stay active. I mean, even on vacation.
But I think that's the key is that for me, vacation is more about mental rest than physical rest. And I think I don't feel good. If I'm on vacation and I sleep in, I have a huge breakfast at the resort, I'm sitting by the pool, I get like very lethargic. Like my dream vacation, I actually had this with my awesome fiance who's very active. Would get up in the morning, maybe I'll go to a jiu-jitsu gym or get a quick workout in the morning, have breakfast, hang out by the pool for half the day. Then go to a Whole Foods, get a smoothie so I'm not eating a real heavy meal, and then go hiking for 3 hours. Like for me, that's, and you're out, you're enjoying the play, you're not, that for me is way more relaxing than just sitting doing absolutely nothing. Because I don't know, I love to, trust me, there's nothing like Joe Rogan had a thing on his podcast and he said, if I have a hard day and I get home and I put my feet up, I enjoy it so much because I've earned that TV time. Yeah. And I think that's the key is if you're out of work or you're whatever, independently wealthy, and you get up in the morning and you've got no goals, nothing to do, and you put your feet up and you watch 8 hours of Netflix, after 2 hours, there's a law of diminishing returns for that kind of relaxation. Whereas when you earn it, then you really enjoy it. I think that's kind of the same with staying active. Is I feel better doing something than just sitting around doing nothing.
Just don't pick up any more hitchhikers, John. So he's on vacation, and I see this photo of, I think it was you or Jen sitting like in front of some weird looking dude, and they're in the middle of a rainforest, and I'm like, who's that dude? And they're like, he was a hitchhiker. We picked him up, and I'm like, what? You guys picked up a hitchhiker?
What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, I get that he's a professional fighter, Golden Gloves champ, black belt in jiu-jitsu, but I can't believe it.
No. What happened was we went hiking, and we got horribly lost. And then we actually came kind of back to the trail, and it was getting dark. And we're like, thank God we met this couple. And then they were like, we were lost too. We're like, okay. So we're like telling them which way to go. So they're walking out with us. And then he's like, yeah, so I hitchhike here. Can I get a ride home? And I couldn't say no. But then I was in the car, and Jen's like, yeah, so Lauren, my fiance just detoured a jiu-jitsu class this morning. Like, she just dropped that in the conversation. I'm like, baby, he looked like the least threatening guy I've ever seen. Nice guy from Denmark.
Yeah.
It's funny.
I was laughing so hard when I read that you guys picked up a hitchhiker, and Jen messaged me and she said, I made sure to drop the hint that he's a lethal weapon and not to mess with us.
And this guy's probably like, uh-oh. She told me, why did I get in this car?
He was actually a huge UFC fan. It was funny. So then we got chatting.
Yeah, that's awesome. UFC, yeah. But you're just a nice guy. So you're just a kind guy. You would pick up a hitchhiker. I pride myself on being a pretty nice guy. I don't know what I would do in that situation if somebody was in the. I mean, it's getting dark, and he's like, "Hey,
they were kind of stranded."
It's a tough.
It's hard to say no when you get. If I had driven past him and he had his thumb out, I probably would have kept driving. Yeah. But when you were hiking with him for 5 minutes, and he's like, "Hey, buddy, can you help me out?"
So if you are listening and you are a hitchhiker, if we have any hitchhikers listening, you need to find Lawrence when he's not driving by you, and then ask him for a ride in person.
Spend 5 minutes with him.
Yeah,
and he'll take you anywhere you want to go.
Wherever you want to go. But he's a lethal weapon. So. What's the next trip? You're going somewhere, or you're going to England now?
Yes, I'm doing there's a jiu-jitsu competition in 2 weeks. It's the British Championships.
Wait, I thought that's in September.
So there's two. There's there's one in September, different organization, but the IBJF is in 2 weeks.
Okay. So for those that don't know, and you got a bunch of people commenting right now, Lawrence, and I'll read some of these out because you have a ton of fans. We got Mark Worley saying, agreed, early workouts, set a mental preparation for the day. Ryan Foley, love it. David said, made it. Jonathan Beener said, that's what I do. Donnell, I think you may have competed against him, actually. He said, morning workouts are the best, clears my head for the day, and that's my me time. Everyone should do it.
Donnell,
path. Got tons of people. Justin, our past guest. He's commenting as well. You've taken jiu-jitsu and made it such a big part of your life now before it was boxing. Was it always a love just for martial arts that got you from boxing to jiu-jitsu, or what got you loving the two sports?
Yeah, it's so weird. I think it's so funny because our good friend Christian, he got into, when we were fighting together, I said, oh, how did you get started? And he said, I was watching the Van Damme movies, Kickboxer and Bloodsport. And it was honestly the same for me. I was the least, like, there's two types of fighters, I think, in the UFC. You have the guys that if they weren't fighting professionally would probably be going out drinking and fucking guys up, like fighting on the streets. Yeah. They're just kind of natural fighters. And then you have the guys like St. Pierre epitomized it. He was bullied at school. He was kind of a shy, introverted guy, very, very smart. And he kind of started that, as a traditional martial artist, and then that kind of evolved and led to him getting into fighting. But even all the way through his career, he always said he loved the preparation, but he hated the fighting. He'd always wake up on fight day and wish there was some accident to the arena that had to cancel the fight. And it was so he's saying that as the long-standing champion of his weight class. And I loved hearing that because I remember that was always the same for me too. It was always for me just number one as a kid. I guess you wanted to feel like you can handle yourself, but then it was just that my biggest competitor was myself. So I was always just trying to grow and push yourself. If you go into a boxing gym and you're just hitting the bag and the coach says, hey, do you want to spar? It's very different to if he's saying, hey, you signed up for the Golden Gloves in 6 weeks. You're going to have a real tough, 16 guys in your division. It's a tournament. You want to try and win it. It's going to give you the motivation to do it properly. And I think that's how it started was I just went to a jiu-jitsu gym, Carlson Gracie gym back in the day. And it was my old boxing coach was like, hey, you've got the jaw of a fighter. You should come by. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. Boxing and jiu-jitsu in the same place. And I never even wanted to fight. I was working full time. I was always about my career. And he was like, oh, you should do the Golden Gloves. And I was like, okay. And it was just, and then it became, I didn't win the first year. I think I got to the semifinals. And I was like, okay, that's my goal, to win the Golden Gloves. Then when I won the Golden Gloves, a lot of guys I trained with, actually, they won the Golden Gloves too. And then that was it. That they'd had enough. And I was like, well, I could be like them. I could just call it a day. Or I could try to, I was doing jiu-jitsu at the time. UFC, MMA was very new. I was like, what an amazing challenge. There's some statistic that something like 50% of males believe in high school they could be a professional athlete, but only like 2% could. Or, some statistic.
Probably even less than that.
We all and it's a very like something like 60% of people believe they're in the top 25% of anything, not athletic, just of life, right? So we have a big overestimation of our own abilities because obviously it can't be 60% of the top 25. It's only the 25%. So I think that was the key. It was always the challenge for me. So it was always something I was very scared of, something I didn't enjoy the actual. It's fine when you start, but all the anxiety and the build up and everything, I hated it. But if you do something that you hate, you grow, right? So yeah, I think that's what.
I mean, I remember driving you to weigh-ins and then going to your fights, and he's such a nice guy. And you don't ever get into a physical altercation with everybody. You're right. There's some people who just like to get in fist fights. There's stories of Stephan Bonner just kind of going out and getting into just fights just because he likes to fight. Yeah. And then you were always so nice to your opponents. You're like, I really don't want to hurt this guy. And there's a couple opponents where you beat him up, and you could even tell in the middle of the fight you could have hurt them worse, and you were just like looking at the ref like, stop this thing. I'm not going to hit him any harder than I'm hitting him. Whereas we're screaming, keep punching his head off, and you're just being a nice guy. But you could always tell for you it was just a personal challenge, not so much a challenge to go out there and hurt the other guy.
I think that's fair,
yeah,
sure.
Which is awesome. Justin has a question for us. He said, speaking back on the mental taxation of your professions, either one of you guys ever consider hiring a personal assistant to help manage your business dealings? I'll give you the question first.
That's a great question. I was actually just thinking about hiring one about 6 months ago. And then I listened to a podcast, and the guy said, if you think you need a personal assistant, make some changes in your life because you're doing it wrong. And I was like, that's an interesting approach. And I think there's some truth to that. It's not that I wouldn't, but I think the problem with our job is it's too personal. So I find it bad enough when I'm traveling to be like, a client that I'm working with for something, say, hey, I'm out of town this week. My colleague, whoever, will meet you. And I feel like most people don't like that. And I think the same for you too. Yeah. So much of what we do, it's not really what we do. It's more about the confidence. It's about the relationship, and they kind of want you. So it's very tough. And also I think, a lot of the stuff we do, if you have to explain to an assistant to do it, it's almost easier to do it yourself. Yeah. So it's something that I think I would be open to the right person. It's also the person you want as an assistant is basically you 5 years ago that you didn't know as much. They have the same character traits, but they don't know as much. But most of those people don't want to be someone's assistant. They want to be learning themselves.
Exactly.
It's very, very, very tough.
Yeah, it's tough. And I agree. I think for me, we have great staff. I have great staff and partners at the law firm. I got great staff at Main Street and partners. John and I work incredibly well together here at WheelHouse, Bid Mojo. So I have a lot of partners in things. Yeah. But an assistant for me is a weird thing. So when people ask me all the time, and this is to answer Justin's question, I don't know what I would have my assistant do. Because like you said, if it's an email, I respond to my emails at night. Text messages, I respond in real time. Some people say, well, your assistant can pick up your laundry and go, grab, schedule your flights. I'm like, that takes me 2 seconds to do. On my way home, I'll grab my laundry. I'll schedule my flights when I want to schedule my flights. It's a weird thing for me to get somebody to do. And I also don't like telling people do this for me. I guess I just have a weird personality, and I just don't like telling somebody to do something for me that I feel like as an adult or an adult human, I can just go do myself.
But also then it comes down to, I remember my dad, he was a pilot, and you had a minimum amount you had to work to keep your pilot's license. Then you had a maximum amount you were allowed to work to not be an overflown pilot who's going to be tired and crash the plane. So they were very strict with these rules, and he always worked the absolute minimum he could. And then he would do stuff, he would mow his own lawn, he would do stuff around the house. And I remember he was telling me once when I was a kid, he was like, yeah, these guys I work with, these, my friends who are pilots, they work the absolute maximum hours. They're crushing it. They're making a lot more than me. Then they use that money. They pay for a gardener. They pay for this. They pay for that. And he's like, but I enjoy being here with you. We're hanging out in the garden, the sun. Like, I don't want to just work and have everything done for me. And that's my whole life is just work. And I think there's some truth to that. There's definitely a balance. I'm sure, like a lot of stuff, I feel like it's kind of arrogant to say, but like I'm kind of better than just doing this menial paperwork. I wish I could just focus on the bigger picture stuff. But there's also something to be said with maybe you need some more partners. You need some more just to make a few changes. So I don't know. It's a complicated question.
I think I have a lot of good teammates in everything I do. I don't necessarily have somebody to be an assistant but we have Justin said, Roger Dead, thanks for the answer, fellas. Jay Valco, our jiu-jitsu coach / mentor, and also a very, very influential guy. We got to have Jay on the show. He said, LD, recommend 3 books. Genre doesn't matter. And he said, Mo and or LD, I'm not convinced real estate is a better investment than the stock market. Ooh, especially considering the barriers to entry. Am I wrong? So that's 2 good / big questions. So 3 books. We'll go with that one first. And then I'm excited to answer question number 2.
So the
3 books, no genre.
Yeah, it's real tough with books because, I've read a lot over the years. So I recommend it to Jay Salman Rushdie's biography. I think it's called Joseph Anton. Very, very interesting story about Salman Rushdie when the fatwa. He wrote a novel. An English citizen wrote a novel in England, and he had a death threat on his head from some angry people. I think it was in Iran, and basically the government in England, the politicians didn't want to lose the Muslim vote in England, so they basically they didn't really do anything about it. So he lost a decade of his life in hiding. It's fascinating, especially now with all the political stuff going on now. That's a fascinating book and kind of an insight to politicians in England, which is kind of bad. That's a great book. I think the one thing, I think that's because that's funny that I didn't even, that was recommended to me. I didn't even know that was by a real estate guy. I've read his other books, and a friend who doesn't do real estate, an attorney friend, Chris Martins, who's great.
Love Chris. Shout out to Chris.
He recommended it, and that's a really good book on goal setting. And I think I'll give one I read last couple of weeks ago on vacation. Primo Levi. It's called If This Is a Man, and it's basically he's an Italian prison of war survivor. A fascinating book. It's sometimes it's good to read stuff like that. He's an incredible author, so the way he describes what he went through is very, very well written, and also his story is so harrowing. I think it's good. Like it's good to all the stuff. Life. I love all the stuff we complain about now. Complain there's not 3 bathrooms for people that don't know which gender there are. All these things. I think it's a consequence of how good life is, and I think life is so good in 2018. We're finding things to complain about because that's what we do, and it's really good to look back what some of these poor people went through. And what's so crazy is he's not bitter about it. He got through. He survived, and he wasn't like hateful and this and that. It's incredible reads. I'd say those 3.
That and Jay, both you and Jay have always given book recommendations. Jay writes a lot of them on Facebook, and I take a lot of Jay's recommendations and I'll put them into my Audible list. And I've been bad lately. I haven't been reading or listening to a bunch of them. And then obviously when we'd be on dog walks, a lot of the books I've read are thanks to you. So shout out to that. I agree on that. We have such a good thing going in 2018, and we complain about so much crap. Look back 50 years even, and look at like our families and our parents and how they had to grow up and how difficult things were. Even the smallest things, access to information, set aside like how easy life's become with our smartphones and access to going and getting meals, as opposed to ancestors many generations ago had to go out and hunt their meals and bring it home and cook it. But even 50 years ago.
No, you're right. Like a high school kid today has way more access to information than the president a generation ago.
Yeah.
It's insane. The president of the U.S., has a lot less access than we do now. So that's
yeah. When I did book reports, I had to go to a library, check out books, look at an encyclopedia, try to learn something, and now somebody pops it in their Google, and there's the answer and a million sub-answers to it. Everything's become so simple and easy that I feel like people can't deal with what should be normal stress effectively. And then it just goes to kind of groaning and moaning and kind of the
and I like these expressions. I'm not going to say them, but
snowflake.
About these certain types of privileges and this and that. It always makes me laugh because look at you and I right now. Your dad moved here and then he wanted to get his medical degree, but he didn't want to pay for the U.S. prices for medical school. So he went to, was it Guadalajara?
So my dad was having difficulty getting in the U.S. It was right when kind of everything between Iran and the U.S. was happening. And they left because they didn't like the new regime. So he's here. So he moved. He had to learn English, put himself through college, and then go to Guadalajara, Mexico, learn Spanish, and then go through medical school there, and then come back here and grow a business. And I laugh.
So think about that journey he went through. And then now if he's driving a nice car and he's, someone sees him and says, it's okay for him. It's like, well, how did he get there? And the same with my dad. My great-grandfather was a victim of the Holocaust. So my granddad went to England, couldn't speak English, didn't have a degree or anything, struggled, raised 4 kids. My dad grew up incredibly poor, but through hard work got into Cambridge University and got him, the best master's degree there. They begged him to stay on and get his PhD, and he said, "That's fine. I want to travel the world." He just got a job as a pilot. But it's honestly, today, of course, it is easier with privileged kids. But then, on the other side, there's a credible statistic. There's so few second-generation millionaires because it's almost harder for kids that grow up with everything. They don't have motivation. Yeah. Whereas kids, some very successful people grew up struggling, and that was their burning drive to achieve the great success that they had. So it's almost like a two-edged sword. If you want to give your kids everything, and if you work hard and you're successful, but yet you also have to get them to. You want them to be driven. You want them to have their own goals. You want them to understand money, and that's a great challenge that we're going to face. If things keep going well and you raise kids, like how that's something I'm thinking about now at that age. But I think it's something that's thrown around so much. Oh, it's okay for him, and I've heard you say it's okay for Mo, like he grew up rich or something. And I'm like, man, I've seen everything you've done. It's all through hard work and 100-hour work week. So I hate that. I think that's my biggest pet hate is people that see a successful person and say, it's okay for him. Anyone successful have to be, like I said about trading at the beginning, you can be the best trader in the world, but if you're trading a product, if you're trading, Fed funds and interest rates are at 0 not moving, you can be the best trader in the world. You're not going to make any money. Just like, Bill Gates was so successful because he was coding as a kid just at the right time,
Right.
And so, of course, anyone that's successful, you have to have some of the cards have to be right, You have to have the right foundation.
It's the idea of people say, you have to be at the right place at the right time. I think you have to be the right person at the right place at the right time. I think there's a third key to that you could be at the right place at the right time. If you're not the right person, that's not going to work.
100%.
Yeah, it's funny. I get that sometimes, your dad was successful. Yeah, when I was 15, he made me go work, and I didn't go and take over dad's medical practice. I went and did everything I did on my own. And of course, I say that, but I also am very, very lucky to have had an incredible mentor and incredible parents that mentored me in a way that I had no excuse.
But, he was always, even when he was very successful, still working, in my opinion, way too hard, a crazy long weeks. So he showed you by example. And my dad didn't. My dad wanted to work less and enjoy life. He's definitely shown me that by example. But he also, growing up, I never had anything. And he said, if you want something, you want 5 pounds, go mow the lawn. Like he would always make me do something.
That's what I did too. I had to mow the lawn.
Yeah, but I had jobs, delivering papers when I was 10, 12, whatever, paper route. And I worked at a store when I was 14, 15, 16. Like I was always working because I had a great upbringing. I got to travel a lot with him because that was his job. He would take the family on his trips when he was flying places. So I had a great lifestyle. I'm not complaining, but also I was never given anything. It always had to be earned. And I think that's the secret is anything that we get given, no matter how great it is, you don't appreciate it. It's like, it's the same as if, if you're super wealthy and, your kid turns 16 and you buy him a brand new car, sports car, it's like, yeah, he's great. He's going to enjoy it for a few days. But he won't understand the same satisfaction of struggling, achieving success like someone like Ray. And then when Ray's restaurant, if he keeps getting great success and then he can get his Lamborghini, he keeps talking about.
Yeah.
But
he got a tattoo that says Lamborghini. I'm not kidding you. Shout out to our buddy Ray. He's so dedicated to this Lamborghini thing that he actually got a tattoo on his leg that says Lamborghini. So I'm rooting for you.
That's his long-term goal for sure. That's his one-day goal.
I'm rooting for him.
But that's the thing is, and I think that's exactly the same why people that do things like fighting or something, the difference it's a weird, you can go out any night of the week, have a good dinner with friends, get absolutely wasted and party all night. It's a lot of fun. But that fun, it's too easy. You can't compare that to the kind of satisfaction you get from 8 weeks of dieting, training really hard, pushing yourself, and then, say, winning a fight or something. It's a very different type of satisfaction because it was much harder to get. And I think that's the key is things that are really worthwhile tend to be a little bit harder to get the things that are easier.
Yeah. So John just asked me a question from back there. He said, "What restaurant?" It's a restaurant called Cheese May, and it's in San Francisco. So a friend of ours, Ray, who I grew up with him, and Lawrence has known him for a long time. He went out to San Francisco and he started this. It's like a taco spot in San Francisco, and he was not a guy who I would have ever in a million. He was pre-med for a long time. I would have never imagined would have a restaurant. He's busted butt out there in San Francisco.
Yeah, it's awesome. He just wasn't really getting to where he wanted to be here, and he had the opportunity there, and he just picked up and left. And that's exactly what you have to do when before you have the roots and you're already settled somewhere, or even if you do have roots. If things aren't working for you and there's an opportunity somewhere else, you got to go. And I actually saw him there. I was kind of lay over there, and I stopped by and we had some dinner. And it was great. Like, he's absolutely killing it. He's working so hard, but I can see he's happier than when he wasn't.
Yeah.
Because he's moving towards that goal, the Lamborghini,
100%.
the success. He feels like has more validation in life. So it's really great.
Let's answer Jay's question because a couple people are starting to kind of piggyback on that. He said, I'll repeat it. Mo and LD, I'm not convinced real estate is a better investment than the stock market, especially considering the barriers to entry. Am I wrong? I'll say yes, you're wrong, but I'll let Lawrence, who's been successful in investing in both, answer because you have been.
Well, so, obviously things are moving around, so my numbers might be slightly off, but just very broadly, since, the big kind of correction, 2008, 2010, I think the stock market is up 400%. So even if you adjust for inflation, it's still way higher than it was. And I think that all the kind of metrics you value stocks are in territories we haven't really seen before. And all the long-term models show it's way overbought. Whereas if you look at real estate, adjusted for inflation, it's way below it was when it was 2009 prices. So I think that's one thing to consider. I think it's just one, for me personally, seems overbought. I mean, listen, I'm talking about Midwest Chicago real estate. East Coast, West Coast real estate is very, very high. They didn't really have those kind of pullbacks. Same in London. So we're being very specific here. The barrier of entry is a bit more of a tricky one, but like we've talked before, there's ways, FHA buildings, there's ways around it if you don't have too much cash to put down. But the business model of real estate, it's very different. Are you talking about buying a condo? My condo in Streeterville I had for 15 years. I bought when I just moved here, and it's barely up. I mean, it's up probably 12, 15% in 15 years. Yeah, it's horrendous. It's been a terrible investment. But what about, the right 4-unit in Pilsen? Maybe that if I bought that 3 years ago, I'm up 30, 40% on that. Plus, on top of that, my tenants are paying down my loan. Plus, I have a positive cash flow. Plus, all the income I'm receiving on it, my accountant's depreciating the building, so I'm not paying tax on the income. So you have certain benefits. So I think there's a big difference between, are you talking about buying something purely for investment, or you're talking about buying something you want to live in?
And I agree. I think so for a long-term play, the beauty of real estate, obviously, is if you're getting a 15, 30-year loan, especially if you're young enough to do it very early on, you're paying down your principal, so you're building equity because there's the pay down the principal, you have the appreciation, you have the tax benefits, and then on top of that, you have the fourth thing, the cash-on-cash return. So you're actually making income every single month that you can take and invest in other things like stocks. So you can take that income and then invest it somewhere else as well. And the hope is that you pay it off and it becomes a retirement sort of continuous revenue source. Where I don't know if it's as easy to do that with stocks and bonds and the traditional.
Well, exactly, because the thing is, back in 1929 when they had the Great Depression, the crash, the reason that a lot of people were killing themselves and completely wiped out was because they were buying stocks with 10% down. and they had that leverage. So if you buy a stock with 10% down, it goes up 10%, you've doubled your money. And if it goes down 10%, you're broke. You've lost everything. But most people now, you're buying, whatever you're buying, you're investing, you're buying 100%, unless you're trading options and everything. That's a whole nother story. But purely for investing in the stock market. But that's the thing, I think, when you're talking about the real estate, that's something as well. You're getting the leverage from that. So even if you're an investor and you're putting 25% down for a building and it goes up, 4%, well, you just made 4 times that, 16%, because you've had the bank leverage, but you're not getting that on stock. So I think there's a lot of advantages in real estate. That statistic that I think you told me, 9 out of 10 multimillionaires have significant stock market real estate holdings.
Yeah.
And I think that, the first, was it John Astor? I think he was the first American millionaire. He was also the first American multimillionaire. He was called the landlord of Manhattan because he was buying up all the property in Manhattan. So there's a lot of advantages to real estate if you do it sophisticated. If you're doing it in a sophisticated way, you're doing it the right way. That's very different if you're doing things where you're leveraging bank lending, you're leveraging having tenants paying your loan, so you're just going out and buying a condo in somewhere like Streeterville where the prices are already very high per square foot, so you don't have too much upside.
And I think also the volatility over time is less in real estate. So
it's something incredibly less than
yeah,
stocks.
I mean, so the market crashed in 2008 through 12, and it was one of the worst crashes of the real estate market in recent history, and it was very dramatic. The precursors aren't there anymore. But you only lost if you sold during that time. So
Correct,
if you
yeah.
have income, I tell people who are always afraid of buying real estate, like and people's memories are short. So what happens if it crashes again? So long as it produces income, hold it, because that market's going to eventually over time go back up again.
And actually, I just sold, shout out to Brian and Kelly, two very good friends of mine. She bought a condo with her sister just before the crash, and it lost a lot of value on paper. She never sold it. I just sold it for her last year, and she made a great profit on it because she just waited it out. The whole time she was living there, she didn't have to sell it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key: is you can't, if you want to play it safe with real estate investing, just the difference between real estate investing and stock market investing is when people were buying Enron, that was one of the top companies of its day. You don't know behind the scenes all the debacles that are happening, and that thing went to zero. You lost everything. If you're buying on a 25 by 125 lot and you're buying a 4-unit brick building with tenants and it's insured, which your bank is going to make you get insurance as part of the policy, it's never going to go to zero. There'll always be some kind of value. So I think there's a few advantages to real estate that you don't have in the stock market.
I don't think the barrier of entry is as hard as some people think. So to answer Jay's question, Lawrence touched on an FHA loan. You can live in it, put 3.5% down. You can get a 2.5% credit. A mutual friend of ours, Richie, bought a 3-unit building in Pilsen. He put $5,000 down on a $580,000 building. I don't want to give numbers out, but now it's probably worth, 7.25%.
Exactly.
In a couple years. So there's ways to do it. And you don't necessarily have to go as a real estate investor and buy a $500,000 or $700,000 building. You could be putting 25% down even and be buying a $100,000 building. And, you could be doing things to enter being a real estate investor. And Gary Keller, we keep giving a shout out here of Keller Williams. He wrote another book, The Millionaire Real Estate Investor, that I read. And it's really cool because it outlines so many different models of being a real estate investor. And I think there's just different ways to skin the cat.
That's a really great book too. And I think that the thing is, real estate is definitely harder. And it's one of my big regrets in life is when I was very wealthy from trading and I had all this cash to invest in property. We bought the one place. You found me a great commercial property, but that was already way too late. I should have bought a couple of buildings when I had all that cash 5 years earlier. But I didn't know, because that's the thing is I have an MBA. I read all these books on business. Not many people talk about investing in real estate. It's really weird. They're just all 97% of books or whatever, some crazy amount. It's all just, stocks. It's a portfolio where you have, 5% in bullion, 5% in cash, 25% bonds, 60% in stocks or whatever. They always some kind of variation on that theme. And there's all these studies, nothing beats the stock market over time and this and that. But most of those studies, most of those books were written at the end of a 20-year bull market in 2000. And it's not entirely accurate when you add in the inflation and the tax benefits of real estate and things like that. So I would argue that it's just something that there's so many advantages and ways to make money, but it's much more complicated than just being like, hey, you can go, 5 years ago, you could have gone and said, hey, I'm buying everything from Amazon. It's a great company. I love my new iPhone and Apple laptop. I'm going to buy Apple and Amazon shares, and then you'd be killing it today. It's very easy, right? Just using your common sense. Like, these are great companies. I'm going to invest in these companies. Real estate is a bit more complicated. You have to have people that are going to help you find the way in the loopholes, but then you can still do very well.
Yeah. the average millionaire, a good statistic, has 7 sources of income. So, stocks, bonds, that's all part of it. But I think real estate has to be a big part of it if you want long-term financial success and the ability to walk away from stuff and retire.
Right.
Very simply.
Yes.
That's why I keep trying to find different revenue streams of income. I'm creating a lot more of them through different businesses that have supplemental income coming in. But I'm guessing John's giving me hey, we got about 10 minutes left. We got a couple minutes left. We might go a few minutes over because there's a couple questions here, but we'll start wrapping it up. I'll read some of them out. John Demetrius, why is the Wheelhouse crew so good looking? You're talking about Stunning Dunning, not me. There's so many of them, John. This is the most comments and questions we've had. I guess we can't answer all of these.
Well, throw one out there and let's see what happens.
Throw one out there.
Yeah.
Let me go back up again because there's so many of them. Oh, Jim Michael. Shout out to Jim. For those that are considering a career switch in our 40s and 50s and looking to grow their skill sets in a new profession, any thoughts about where to look? Asking for a friend, wink face. Johnny Roto says, not real estate, Jim Michael. You want to answer that one?
Well, I think it's got to be something. So we all, Jim, you and I, Johnny, shout out to Johnny Roto, all of us are at that age where we've seen an incredible shift. So isn't there some incredible percentage of male U.S. workers, they're truck drivers, and that's all going to be automated driving now. So it's got to be, if you're making a transition, whatever it is, it's got to be an industry that's on the up as opposed to one of these old industries that's not going to be around in 10 years. So it's got to. I would imagine it would be something IT based, something. I mean, where do you go? That's a very open-ended question.
Yeah, it's a tough question.
And even our industry. I mean, look at. I didn't want to go. I could have gone back in the trading floor 5 years ago, and I think because I'm confident and optimistic, I think I could have made money trading, even though it was much harder. But I knew that there was going to be it's all eventually going to be electronic, and they're going to close the exchange for good. So I didn't want to stop back doing something knowing it had a definite timeline. But it's the same with us with real estate. I mean, it's shifted. Look how much every year it's shifting. Redfin are trying to make it almost all. They're trying to take all the business, and it's become so much more.
We won't let you, Redfin.
Than it used to be. But it's just, I think that there's certain things where there'll always be a human component, right? I would imagine most people are going to want a surgeon looking over. If you're not just going to want some machine cutting you open doing surgery.
Yeah.
And it's the same, even just the confidence of you're buying a $500,000 condo, you might want to just call someone and be like, hey, do you think this is a good area, this and that? There's certain things where people just want to have some kind of human contact,
AJ Agazarm, who's a good buddy of ours and another jiu-jitsu world champ. Do you ever get the urge to choke out a client? Maybe they're on the fence and you just hit them with an arm bar or rear naked to sort of send them over.
Oh God, that's too funny.
AJ.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge for me. Is I'm a pretty calm guy, and I think you're a pretty calm guy. But you and I have definitely called each other at certain. We're losing our faith in humanity because people are driving us nuts. And I personally think that's the hardest challenge of real estate. Is number one, just having very difficult, unreasonable clients who are very unappreciative.
Yeah.
And just honestly, just a text saying, listen, I really appreciate all the stuff you do goes a long way.
Huge
Whereas
long way.
the opposite, when you're just you're going above, you and I both do it. We're successful in real estate because we go above and beyond what 95% of agents do. And then you just get these really ungrateful clients. So yeah, you do want to shut them out. But I think that's biting your tongue, and it's humbling sometimes.
I've gotten really, really good at just being okay with people being unreasonable. It's strange. I mean, I think that I always tell everybody in life, think about putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Think about the reasonableness standard. We talk about reasonable standard in law, but I tell people just be reasonable with the other person. And I've found that through just working with people in general. I mean, I deal with so many agents on a day-to-day basis, so many legal clients, and I see it more in law than I do in real estate even, because people are kind of, when they're litigating, they're at each other's throats. Just be slightly reasonable, people. Right. And I find myself just coming to terms with the fact that some people are just not reasonable. I cannot strangle them because that is a
lawsuit
waiting to happen.
I think that's very hard for people. Where if you're technically a middleman trying to facilitate a negotiation between a seller who's selling his house and he has a lot of emotion to it and he's got some numbers in his head, and a buyer they've got their fixed budget and they're just going back and forth, and you're in the middle. You're just trying to facilitate it. And sometimes they both kind of you're caught in the crossfires, and that's a little frustrating. But I think so much of what you and I do, it's constant. We're constantly getting calls, texts, emails, And that does get overwhelming. I think that's why it's so important to, if you work hard, you have to play hard too. For me, it's traveling. I have to get out of town. And also I have to have, I turn my phone off, like I need to have time where you have to, otherwise you're going to, lose your mind. I think that's important.
Last question before we go, because I saw this up there a little while ago from our buddy Kyle Berger. He said, I think something about like money is no topic. What are the 3 top places you would go? On that topic of trying to travel and work hard, play hard. Top 3 places.
So incredible places I've been to. I think Iceland is an amazing country. I think you can go there, you can drive around it in about 5 days, and it's like another world. So they did some of the astronauts did some training there because it's kind of like the moon, some areas of Iceland. It's an amazing country. So I would definitely say Iceland. I love Hawaii. I don't know why. I love the culture,
You and Tim Asimos.
Something about, it's not, the beaches in Mexico are way nicer. It's not really the beaches. It's just something about Hawaii. It's just, I'm a huge fan of. And I would say Australia, you have less, I think the whole Australian population is something like the same as, in the LA city and LA area. So you have, 20 million people spread out among a country as big as, pretty much the US, So I think it's such an unusual country, just the things you see and the experiences. There's some awesome places in Australia.
So that was seriously money, no object. He didn't say Wisconsin Dells where you could drive up there. You are definitely having to fly out, but all 3 places I have not gone, and I have to go because I keep going back to Mexico. But you're going to eventually convince me to change my mind.
No, but I've been exactly where you were. I remember when I was trading and I was so overwhelmed and overworked. My vacation, I didn't want to go anywhere and explore. I wanted just to sit on the beach and not leave. I had an argument with an ex-girlfriend because we're in Dominican Republic at all-inclusive, and she's like, honey, can we spend the day in the city? And I said, you can go. I'm not moving. I'm not leaving the all-inclusive resort, So I think I've definitely been at that stage in my life where the vacations are, if you get a lot out of getting there, you get some sun, you get to relax. It's not really the most adventurous vacation, but you get something out of it. I think there's different types of trips you go on. Yeah.
Well, we went over, and everybody knows this. You and I can sit here and chat for hours upon hours. We used to spend every night walking our dogs for a couple hours and chatting about life in general. So we got to have you back on again because there's a couple questions and people said for next time. So we're definitely going to have you back on. Thanks again for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I constantly am growing and learning because of looking up to you and your advice and everything. And we had more people listening this time than any other time, and just everybody wants to know what Lawrence is up to, and everybody wants your advice. So congratulations on
I'm humble.
Obviously
Thanks,
all the success and everything else. So thank you.
Thanks for that.
Next week, we will be back live. We got 2 amazing guests next week. Wednesday again, 3:00. I can't wait to see you guys. John, you got anything for them? No more shout outs?
No, I think we're good for the day.
Awesome. Thanks again. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you for the comments. I like the fact that it's interactive now and we get to answer some of your guys' questions. That's what we want to do. Like us, share us, love us. Like, share, love Lawrence. We really appreciate it and really love all the love that we're getting. So thank you, guys. See you guys next Wednesday at 3.
In 3, 2,